Mike, I'll let you do the introduction.
Very good. Well, let's start off with a tune.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, good evening and welcome. In this, the darkening time of year, Samhain arrives to herald autumn down its slide to winter, when the barrier between the living and the dead is the thinnest. Tonight, we present stories collected in 19th century rural Ireland, stories and songs from a time when science wasn't so sure of itself. Tales and tunes of banshees and fiends, musical fairies, not the nice kind, and of course ghosts. We endeavor here this evening to embrace the dark and shorten the night. The name Amadán Dubh, which we call ourselves tonight, hails from the Irish folklore and refers to the dark fool or dark fairy, a trickster fairy. Amadán Dubh is the bringer of madness and oblivion, haunting the hills after sunset, playing reed pipes to work his magic. Tonight, Amadán Dubh inhabits Sue Romero on the drum and the whistle, Mike Hoke on the fiddle, Bill Fahy on the guitar and banjo, and myself, Mike Carroll. And our first story, which will be read by Bill, asks any of us is, do we have this good a friend?
The grave of his fathers. There was a lad in Bentry Parish once, and he could not make a living in the place where he was. So he said to himself he would travel to the north of Ireland, and maybe would find something to do there that would bring a bite of food to his mouth. So he set out with a friend from the same parish, and they walked to Ireland till they came to the north. There they took service with a farmer, and were doing well for a time. But after a time, the lad fell sick. He called his friend to him and said, "I know that I'm going to die." "Don't say that," said his friend. "I do say that, for young or old, when the day comes, we must go. But I always thought, when I came to die, to be buried in my own churchyard among my own kindred, and now I am dying a long way from home. But promise me this much, that when I am dead, you will cut the head off me and take that and bury it in my own churchyard." His friend was unwilling at first, but at the last he gave the promise, and when the lad died, he died happy, for he knew that some part of him would rest in his own churchyard. So when he died, his friend was true to his word. He cut the head from him and started through Ireland with the head wrapped in a cloth. walking, and he turned into the house of his friend and put the cloth with the head in it on the table and told them that it was their son's head and that he had died in the north, and that he wished that his head be buried in his own churchyard since his body could not rest there. And they got in a coffin, a barrel of porter, and some tobacco pipes, and had a wake on the head. And the next day, they started for the churchyard with the head in the coffin. You know that Bentry Churchyard is in a place where two roads meet. Now, as they came down their road, they saw another funeral coming down the road in the other direction. Now, it is custom when two funerals are coming to the same churchyard at the same time for them to race together so that the one that wins will be the first to bury their dead. So they all made speed down the road, and the other funeral hastened down the other road, and they came together in the same moment to the wall of the churchyard. And as they touched the wall, the other funeral, the coffin and the bearers all vanished as though the earth had swallowed it. They wondered at this, but they said they had come to bury the head, so they buried the head. They lifted the coffin over the wall to the place where the grave was open, and there they buried the head as the young man had asked when he was dying. So it was for a time, but after some months, another man of the family died, and they opened the grave again. And what should they find there? But two coffins, and in one coffin the head, and the other the body. So in the end, the lad had his wish and rested, head, body, and all, in the grave of his father.
Very good, Bill. Thanks. Our next song is a battle of wits between the devil and the weaver's wife. I'll be the devil.
Perfect.
Now you must answer my questions 9. Sing 99, 90. Or you aren't gods, you are one of mine. Or who is the weaver's Bonnie? What is whiter than the milk? Sing 99, 90. And what is softer than the silk? And who is the weaver's Bonnie?
Snow is whiter than the milk.
Sing 99, 90.
And love is softer than the silk. And I am the weaver's Bonnie.
What is louder than a horn? Sing 99, 90. And what is sharper than a thorn? And who is the weaver's Bonnie?
Thunder's louder than a horn.
Sing 99, 90.
And death is sharper than a thorn. And I am the weaver's Bonnie.
What is higher than a tree? Sing 99, 90. And what is deeper than the sea? And who is the weaver's Bonnie?
Heaven is higher than a tree.
Sing 99, 90.
And hell is deeper than the sea. And I am the weaver's Bonnie.
What's more innocent than a lamb? Sing 99, 90. And what is meaner than womankind? And who is the weaver's Bonnie?
The devil's meaner than the babe's more innocent than a lamb. Sing
99, 90.
And the devil is meaner than womankind. And I am the weaver's Bonnie.
Now you have answered my questions 9. Sing 99, 90. So you are gods, you are none of mine. And you are the weaver's Bonnie. sings of the bailiff who asked too many questions.
So this song comes from a time during the Irish famine when a lot of poor Irish tenants were being evicted out of their homes. And the one in charge of that, of doing that miserable deed, was the bailiff. So that's why you'll see that the bailiff is not highly liked in this song. Also, there are two Irish words in this song. One is a gossoon, which is a little boy, and the other is a bannock, which is a pig. One fine sunny evening last summer, I was strolling along by the sea, when a pair of queer playboys were roving before me I happened to see. Now to learn what these boyos were up to, at a rifle I hastened me walk, for I thought I could learn their professions if I got within range of their talk. Now one of these boys was the devil, and the other was Bailiff McGlynn, and one was as bad as the other, and both were as ugly as sin. Says the old boy, says he, I'm the devil, and you are a bailiff, I see. Ah, 'tis the devil himself, says the bailiff. Now that beats the devil, says he. Now a gossoon ran out from a cottage and took himself over the fields. May the devil take you, cried his mother, as she rattled a stone at his heels. Oh, now why don't you take that young rascal? Your Highness the bailiff, he cried. Ah, 'twas not with her heart that she said it, the devil, he smiling replied. Now close by a small patch of potatoes, a bailiff was striving to dig, when the owner came out and she cried, may the devil take you for a pig. Said the bailiff, now that's a fine offer, why not take the bannock, says he. Ah, 'twas but with her lips that she said it, and that's not sufficient for me. As they jogged on, a gossoon espied them, and into his mother he sped, crying, mother, says he, there's the bailiff. And she clasped her two hands and she said, may the devil take that ugly bailiff. Said the old boy, bedad, that'll do. 'Twas straight from her heart that she said it, so Bailiff McGlynn, I'll take you.
Okay. Sorry.
is The Changeling and Biddy Early. Has anybody ever heard of a changeling? Any of the changeling stories? For those who haven't, it's when the fairies steal away a healthy child and replace that child with a sickly, it seems like a sickly child, but it's actually a fairy. So this story is about a woman named Biddy Early, and she actually lived, born in 1798 and died in 1874. And she's still talked about in Ireland today. She was known as a wise woman, like a natural healer. But most importantly, she knew the ways of the fairies. She knew how to deal with them. So whenever there was trouble with the fairies, they called in Biddy Early. And this story was recorded in 1978 even, was still being told then, and was gathered in County Kerry. There was a child inside the cot anyway, like, by the fire. The child used never stop crying, always crying, you know, and it never thriving, always shrinking like. The child was eating more than 4 or 6 people in the house. It had them almost broke, you know, eating and eat and eat, drink and drink, and never stop crying. They used to get any sleep or nothing out of this child. So bejakers, they sent for Biddy Early anyway, like. And Biddy Early came on, and she looked at the child in the cot. So she said, everybody leave the house now. Because she knew if the mother was watching her, what she was going to do to that child, she couldn't stand it like. So they were almost as afraid of Biddy Early as they were of the fairies, you know. Out she go, she ordered them. Out of the house, she said. If you want your child cured, get out of the house. So she put them all out of the house, and she shut the windows, and she put on a big fire. And she caught the child, and she held the child to the fire. And such heat that was getting out her own hands now, you know, if she couldn't hardly stick the heat. And she kept at it, and the child started roaring and screaming and roaring and screaming. And the next thing anyway, this gust of smoke came out from the firelight and went up the chimney, you know. And the fire came in behind her, and the child fell off weightless and like. Ah, said the fairy, and 'twas well you showed up in time, because I'd have broke this place and I'd have broke this farm, he said. And she shouted outside for somebody to open the door, and the fairy went out the door, and the child never stopped thriving after that.
It was the other evening I chanced to go roving. Down by the clear river I jogged along. There I heard an old man making sad lamentations about rocking the cradle, a child not his own. Hi-ho, my laddie Lizy, perhaps your own daddy will never be known. I am seeing and sighing and rocking the cradle and nursing a baby that's none of my own.
Next, we have a poem by Nobel Prize-winning Irish poet William Butler Yeats. It's called The Stolen Child, and he imagines what the fairies might have said as they tried to lure away a child in order to steal it. Where dips the rocky highland of Sleuthwood in the lake, there lies a leafy island where flapping herons wake the drowsy water rats. There we've hid our fairy vats, full of berries and of reddest stolen cherries. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Where the wave of moonlight glosses the dim gray sands with light, far off by furthest Rosses, we foot it all the night, weaving olden dances, mingling hands and mingling glances, till the moon has taken flight. To and fro we leap and chase the frothy bubbles, while the world's full of troubles and anxious in its sleep. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Where the wandering water gushes from the hills above Glencar, and pools among the rushes that scarce could bathe a star, we seek for slumbering trout and whisper in their ears, give them unquiet dreams, leaning softly out from ferns that drop their tears over the young streams. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Away with us he's going, the solemn-eyed. He'll hear no more the lowing of the calves on the warm hillside, or the kettle on the hob sing peace into his breast, or see the brown mice bob round the oatmeal chest. For he comes, the human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than he can understand.
up next, I've got a song for you. I have to tell you, one of my hobbies is getting up early in the morning and researching old songs from hundreds of years ago. Looking for an Irish ghost song. I found this. It was written by David Gibson and Emil Karst in 1892. And it's kind of a stage Irish, but the song needed to be changed a little bit for modern ears. So here's our version of a song called Duligan's Ghost. Well, I'll tell you the story of Duligan. He died 40 years ago. He was loved by everybody, County Mayo. He's a real blue-blooded man, but work was not his yoke. He had friends in all the towns with all the towns.
That's the truth, the truth. He's telling you the truth. That's the truth, nothing but the truth.
Well, he had his hair cut once a week. His whiskers were dyed black. His neck lined with flannel and it stretched around his back. When he died, he gasped for breath, but no breath he could take. So after death, we stretched him out and laid him on a slab.
The truth, he's telling you the truth, that's the truth, nothing but the truth.
To hold a wake that we began, we gave it in great style. We drank whiskey by the gallon, had a shindy for a while. Well, soon she got boiling drunk and on the corpse she fell. And with a roar, Duligan, get up, we all began to yell.
That's the truth, he's telling you the truth, it's the truth, nothing but the truth.
Well, there was me and Mike, sprawling on the floor. Ed jumped out the window and Skip ran out the door. And when I saw Duligan, he was sitting in a chair. We walked in and asked him how the devil he got there.
Oh, it's the truth, he's telling you the truth, it's the truth, nothing but the truth.
Said he, if I don't get a drink, I'll surely take a chill. And of whiskey and good brandy, old Duligan took his fill. He drank until he got a jag, then he stood up and he said, I couldn't watch you all get drunk when I was lying dead.
It's the truth, he's telling you the truth, it's the truth, nothing but the truth.
So let's drink a health to all that's here and pass around the glass. O'Rourke sent the liquor round as fast as it could pass. Duligan, he got blazing drunk, raised the devil with his mirth. Then he gently died again, and we laid him in his berth.
That's the truth, he's telling you the truth, it's the truth, nothing but the truth. We placed a bottle at his head and another at his feet. For fear he'd want to rise again and call another treat. We didn't want to wake the dead, so we closed his coffin up and stayed there all night drinking, making sure he didn't wake up.
That's the truth, I'm telling you the truth, it's nothing but the truth. Thank you.
In this tale, Nell learns to keep an eye out for the fairies. And these are not the good fairies either, at all.
And it was a good eye.
When you're with the fairies, keep them covered, that's all I can tell you. This is from Irish Fairy Tales, Folklore and Legends by Geoffrey Strahan, 1904. The family of Nell Connor had all retired to bed on a wet, stormy December night when a loud knocking at the door and a strange, shrill voice demanding the midwife's attendance on a sick woman aroused the inmates from their slumber. The rain pattered against the single pane that formed the only window of the apartment, and the wind whistled mournfully through the chinks of its mud wall. Nell, ever faithful to her profession, rose unreluctantly, flung her mantle of frieze on her shoulders, and opened the door. "'Tis a fearful wild night to venture abroad in," said she, accosting a tall, dark-looking man mounted on a fine gray horse. But it's strange, Acushla, I don't know ye. Have we far to go? Not far, said the dark man in a tone that chilled the midwife's soul. He caught her hand, and Nell felt herself raise as light as a feather onto the pillion behind him. They shot along with a lightning's rapidity, and though a pitchy darkness enveloped earth and heaven, the gray horse moved with sure and easy speed. After passing many a hollow dell and rising moorland, during which no sound betrayed the tramp of the horse's hoofs, they came to the bank of the swollen and rapid Araglin. The roaring rush of the muddy river, the blue gleam of the lightning flashing over its troubled wave, and the fitful moaning of its savage blast struck terror to the midwife's heart. God and the blessed be Virgin, preserve me, she exclaimed in terror, and the hollow cliffs that part the dashing waters reverberated the sounds. Utter those names again and abide the consequences, said the mysterious horseman angrily. Then plunging into the wild stream, be silent, he continued, and fear nothing, though sailing in a turf dish on the wide sea. Gaining the opposite bank, they rode in the same rapid rate with which they at first set forward, till they reached the Fort of Doom, which Nell well recognized as the rising moon flung her pale, melancholy light athwart the horizon. Alighting from his horse, the tall, dark man struck the ground thrice with his foot, whereupon there appeared a long flight of steps that led into the bosom of the earth. He instantly descended and called upon his terrified companion to follow him. They entered a winding passage that led into a lofty hall, illuminated with burning tapers. The tables groaned beneath the splendid feast. The unearthly trilling of the melting harp stole softly on the ear, while a circle of lovely ladies and polished gentlemen flew through all the mazes of a dance. These were the prominent sights that caught Nell's attention as her conductor led her hastily through the hall to an inner chamber, where lay the lady whom she was called upon to assist. After Nell had announced the birth of a fine boy, the tall, dark man, who still remained in the room, gave her a vessel containing the greenish ointment, with which he ordered her to anoint the newborn babe from head to foot. But he cautioned her to suffer none of it to touch any part of her except the hand that performed the operation. When the unction was concluded and the child dressed and laid in the superb cradle, Nell Connor, feeling a certain twitching sensation in her right eye, instinctively clapped her hand to that organ, when she perceived the objects in the chamber suddenly undergo a strange metamorphosis and assume an indefinable twofold appearance in which the true and the unreal blended together in an indescribable way. She rightly considered that this arose from the virtue of the ointment, which gave her right eye the power of seeing things in this strange dwelling in their proper shape. Upon closing her left eye, all delusion vanished. The beautiful lady appeared a withered hag, the lovely boy a shapeless, cross-grained squalor, and the all-mysterious horseman was suddenly changed into a little red-haired chap of 3 feet high, wearing a conical red cap, his deformed, skinny mouth extending from ear to ear, and his restless, piercing eyes seemed to search the midwife's soul whenever she met their malignant glance. Nell Connor, said the little red-haired man, I feel obliged by your civility, and here is trifle for your trouble. So saying, he put into her hand what seemed to her left eye to be 2 bright pieces of gold, but which the right one detected as 2 ivy leaves clipped around the edges. In passing out of the place, the hall and its guests appeared sadly altered. The polished gentlemen and lovely ladies were short, red-capped fellows and deformed beldames, and the bright tapers were twinkling rushlights. Upon emerging into the moonlight, the gallant gray that traveled so fleetly to doom proved nothing more than the beam of an old plow which had lain since the preceding spring across the stone gap at the corner of Nell's cabin. Quaking with terror, she mounted behind her conductor. The beam performed its part to admiration, outstripped the wind, recrossing the roaring Araglin, and after some hard cantering over marsh and moorland, set Nell Connor down, pretty much to her satisfaction, at her own door, as the march cock upon the roost within proclaimed the approach of the tardy day. Now Mill Street Fair happened on the next day, and Nell Connor, having business there, was surprised on entering the town to see her little red-haired acquaintance busily employed in selecting and carrying off the choicest cows and substituting in their stead clods or stones or other inanimate things which in the strict resemblance they were made to bear to the animals thus abstracted deceived every mortal eye but Nell's. She attentively watched his progress during the afternoon. At length she entered a crowded tent where sat a fine-looking country girl and her sweetheart, refreshing themselves with cake and a glass of punch. The busy purloiner of cows approached the maiden, and thrusting a switch up her nostril, caused her to sneeze 3 successive times. He grinned horribly at the first and second sneeze, but at the third, when Nell Connor exclaimed, "Christ and the Blessed Virgin between you and the evil one, Macaulay Bon." The disappointed fairy gnashed his teeth in fury. His malignant eyes beamed with rage, and darting like a lightning's flash through the guests of the crowded tent to the spot where Nell Connor stood, and striking out her right eye with the point of his switch, he immediately disappeared.
This next story is The Banshee Cries for the Boils from County Cracks by T.G.F. Patterson in 1945.
County Cracks.
Right next. No, I'm not gonna go there. Sorry.
Never heard of that county.
Tough crowd. I saw the Banshee when old Boyle's mother died. I was coming home in the dusk with a load of sods, the old gray horse and me mother with me. And says she to me, some poor woman has lost her man, or maybe a son. And the thing wore a shroud as if it had come from a coffin, and its hair was streaming in the wind. We both saw it. And me mother, she said a prayer, maybe two. "That's the banshee," says she. I had cried for many an old family here, and some say it is one that had gone before. Be that as it may, no human heart could utter such grief, so mind ye, I doubt it.
Thank you. And in our final story, the coffin maker has some old friends for dinner. There lived a man in Cork whose name was Daniel Crowley. He was a coffin maker by trade and had a deal of coffins laid by, so that his apprentice might sell them when himself was not at home. A messenger came to Daniel Crowley's shop one day and told him that there was a man dead at the end of town and to send up a coffin for him or to make one. Daniel Crowley took down a coffin, put it in his donkey cart, drove to the wake house, went in and told the people of the house that the coffin was there for them. The corpse was laid out on the table in a room next to the kitchen. 5 or 6 women were keeping watch around it. Many people were in the kitchen. Daniel Crowley was asked to sit down and commence to shorten the night. That is, to tell stories, amuse himself and others. A tumbler of punch was brought, and he promised to do the best he could. He began to tell stories and shorten the night. A second glass of punch was brought to him, and he went on telling tales. There was a man at the wake who sang a song. After another was found, and then another. Then the people asked Daniel Crowley to sing, and he did. The song that he sang was of another nation. He sang of the good people, the fairies. The song pleased the company. They desired him to sing again, and he did not refuse. When I was a-walking down by the loch, when I was a-walking one morning of late, who should I spy but my own dear comrade, wrapped up in flannel, so hard was his fate. I boldly stepped up to, and kindly did ask him, why are you wrapped in flannel so wide? Well, my body is injured, and sadly disordered, all by a young woman, my own heart's delight. Oh, had she but told me, when she disordered me, had she but told me of it at the time, well, I might have got salts or pills of white mercury. Now I'm cut down in the height of my prime. Get 6 pretty maidens to carry my coffin, 6 pretty maidens to bear up my pall, and give to each of them bunches of roses, that they may not smell me as they go along. Daniel Crowley pleased the company so much with his 2 songs that a woman who had 3 daughters wanted to make a match for one of them and get Daniel Crowley as a husband for her. Crowley was a bachelor, well on in years, and had never thought of marrying. The mother spoke of the match to the woman sitting next to her. The woman shook her head, but the mother said,
If he takes one of my daughters, I'll be glad, for he has money laid by. Do you go and speak to him, but say nothing of me at first.
The woman went to Daniel Crowley then and told him that she had had a fine, beautiful girl in view, and that now was the time to get a good wife. He'd never have such a chance again. Crowley rose up in great anger. There isn't a woman wearing clothes that I'd marry. There isn't a woman born that could bring me to make two halves of my loaf for her. The woman was insulted now and forgot herself. She began to abuse Crowley.
Bad luck to you, you hairy little scoundrel. You might be a grandfather to my child. You are not fit to clean the shoes on her feet. You have only dead people for company, day and night. 'Tis by them you make your living.
Oh then, I prefer the dead to the living any day if all of the living were like you. Besides, I have nothing against the dead. I'm getting employment from them and not from the living, for 'tis the dead for which I make coffins.
Well, bad luck to you. 'Tis with the dead you ought to be, and not with the living. 'Twould be fitter for you to go out of this altogether and go to your dead people.
I would if I could and knew how to get to them.
Why don't you invite them to supper?
He rose up then, went out and called, Men, women, children, soldiers, sailors, all people that I have ever made coffins for, I invite you tonight to my house, and I'll spend what I need in giving a feast. The people who were watching the dead man on the table saw him smile when he heard the invitation. They ran out of the room in fright and out of the kitchen, and Daniel Crowley hurried away to his shop as fast as ever his donkey cart could carry him. On the way, he came to a public house, and going in, he bought a pint bottle of whiskey, put it in his pocket, and drove on. The workshop was locked and the shutters down when he left that evening, but when he came near, he saw that all the windows were shining with light, and he was in dread that the building was burning or the robbers were in it. When right there, Crowley slipped into a corner of the building opposite to know, could he see what was happening? And soon he saw crowds of men, women, and children walking towards the shop and going in, and none coming out. Sometime when a man tapped him on the shoulder and asked,
Is it here you are? And we're waiting for you. 'Tis a shame to treat company this way. Come now.
Crowley went with the man to the shop, and as he passed the threshold, he saw a great gathering of people. Some were neighbors, people he had known in the past. All were dancing, singing, and amusing themselves. He was not long looking on when a man came to him and said,
You seem to not know me, Daniel Crowley.
Well, I don't know you. How could I?
You might then, and you ought to know me, for I am the first man you made a coffin for, and 'twas I gave you the first start in the business.
Soon another man came up, a lame man.
Do you know me, Daniel Crowley?
I do not.
I am your cousin. It isn't long since I died.
Oh, now I know you well, for you're lame. In God's name, how am I going to get these people out of this? What time is it?
It is early. Hardly 11 o'clock, man.
Crowley wondered that it was just so early.
Receive them kindly. Make merriment as you can.
Well, I have no money with me to get food or drink with them. 'Tis night and all the places are closed.
We'll do the best you can.
The best dancer they had was a piper by the name of John Reardon from the city of Cork. The fiddler was one John Healy. Healy brought no fiddle with him, but he made one, and the way he made it was to take off what flesh he had on his body. He rubbed up and down on his own ribs, each one having a different note. And he made the loveliest music that Daniel Crowley had ever heard. After that, the whole company followed his example. All threw off what flesh they had on them and began to dance jigs, hornpipes, and their bare bones. Daniel Crowley plucked up all his courage to know could he live through the night, but still he thought daylight would never come. There was one man, John Sullivan, that he noticed especially. The man had married twice in his life, and with him came the two women. Crowley saw him take out the second wife to dance a breakdown, and the two danced so well that the company was delighted, and all the skeletons had their mouths open and laughing. He danced and knocked so much merriment out of them all that his first wife, who was in the end of the house, became jealous and mad altogether. She ran down to where he was and told him she had a better right to dance with him than the second wife.
Well, that's not the truth for you. When he marries me, you were a dead woman, and he was free. And I'm a better dancer than what you are. And I will dance with him whether you like it or not.
Hold your tongue. I can come to the feast tonight, all but for the loan of another woman's shin bones.
Sullivan looked at the two wives and asked the second one,
Isn't it your own shin bones you have?
Well, no, they are borrowed. I borrowed the neighbor woman's shins from her, and 'tis those I have with me tonight.
Who is the owner of the shin bones you have on you?
Well, they belong to one Catherine Murray. She hadn't a very good name in life.
But why didn't you come on your own feet?
Well, I wasn't so good myself in my life. And I was put under a penalty, and the penalty is that whenever there's a feast or a ball, I cannot go to it unless I borrow a pair of shins.
Sullivan was raging when he found out that the shin bones he had been dancing with belonged to a third woman, and she not the best. And he gave a slap to the wife that sent her spinning into the corner. Now, the woman had relations among the skeletons present, and they were none too happy when they saw the man strike their friend.
We'll never let that go with him. We must knock satisfaction out of Sullivan.
The woman's friends rose up, and as there were no clubs or weapons, they pulled off their left arms and began to slash and strike with them in terrible fashion. There was an awful battle in 1 minute. When this was going on, Daniel Crowley was standing below at the end of the room, cold and hungry, not knowing if he'd be killed. As Sullivan was trying to dodge the blows sent against him, he got as far as Daniel Crowley and stepped on his toe without knowing it. Crowley got vexed and gave Sullivan a blow with his fist that drove the head from him and sent it flying across the room. When Sullivan saw the head flying off from the blow, he ran and, catching it, aimed a blow at Daniel Crowley with the head, and aimed so truly that he knocked him under the bench. Then, having him at a disadvantage, he squeezed his throat and held him so firmly between the bench and the floor that the man lost all his senses and couldn't remember a thing more. When Daniel Crowley came to himself in the morning, his apprentice found him stretched under the bench with an empty bottle under his arm. He was bruised and pounded. His throat was sore where Sullivan had squeezed it, and he didn't know how the company broke up nor when the guests went away. Thank you very much. And thanks again for coming one more time. All the way to Sue from Cheryl, Mike from Westerville, we have Bill from Rome, and I'm Mike from Little Falls, and we were Amadán Dubh tonight. You can be a member if you want.
Thank you very much. It was Mike who put this program together. He's been doing this for a few years now. We started it probably 5 or 6 years ago, and we didn't have it last year, but we had it 2 years ago here, and I asked him to reprise it here for us, and so if you liked it,
thank you. You guys are very helpful.
you did a good job.
Thank you very much.